Hello, I'm Jessica from So Sweet Quilt Shop, and today's video is going to be block 1 of the $8 quilt club that we're doing here at the store. The pattern that we're using is called a baker's dozen, and it's done by Moda. So you could look it up on the internet and do this along with us with your own fabric. But if you're doing it with us and coming to our store the second Saturday of every month, today we're doing block 1, and so this is what your fabric looks like at home. If you're doing the modern version, if you're doing the traditional version, it's the same block. It's put together the same way, but your colors are going to look differently. So today I'm going to show you how to do the modern colorway for the $8 quilt club. Thank you for watching. The first thing we're going to do is draw lines halfway through our little squares. So I'm just using I'm using a little ruler and my friction pin. I'm just drawing lines right through the middle. And when you have your pattern, you know what size these squares should be. And you should have 16 of them. So you're going to draw a line through the middle of 16 squares. Okay, I have my lines on all of the middles, or through the diagonal of my little squares, and now I have these big blocks. You should have 4 of these, 2 one color and 2 another color. And I'm going to sew these little squares right onto the corners of these big blocks. So you'll have 4 squares on each block, and my sew line is going to be that line that I drew on. So now I'm sewing them on, and I'm going to just do chain sewing. That's faster for me. So I'm just sewing on that line that I drew. Squares sewn on, so as you can see I have a block that looks like that with all 4 small squares onto the big square, and you should have 4 of these. So there I have 2 blues and I have 2 pinks. Now what you're going to do is cut this extra off. So I'm just cutting 1/4 of an inch to where I drew that line. And I've already sewn these. You can't see that in the video.
Mommy, I want duct tape.
Okay, just a minute.
I want duct tape.
So that's what it looks like when it's all cut out. So I'm going to do that with all 4 of those. I have them all cut out. All the extras cut off, so I have 4 squares that look like this, and so now I'm just going to press these triangles out to make it a square shape. And we use best press, so I'm going to spray a little best press on here. So after I've ironed them all out, I should have 4 squares that look like this. After you sew your pieces on, you need to trim up your squares. And they should trim out to be 6 1/4. And so that's what I've done. And here's some of the little pieces that I got off of that trimming. So it's not very much, but it makes a big difference when you put your block together. That is probably the most important part of sewing quilt blocks, is making sure that everything's trimmed before you then piece them together. I trimmed up my blocks, and the most important thing with this block is making sure that your little gray pieces match up on the points. And so that's what all the trimming is really to help do. It's time to sew your rows together, so I'll sew this top row together and then this bottom row together. Okay, once again, the most important part of this block is to make sure that your points are going to line up here. So I'm putting those together first. You could put a couple pins in there if you needed to, and then you're going to sew them together using a 1/4 inch seam. I sewed my rows together and then I ironed this middle seam open, and that's how I'm going to put them together. Ta-da! There is the finished block. Thanks for watching. Have a nice